I stood alone in that empty bookstore, clutching my debut novel, while the few strangers who'd wandered in for free wine asked if I knew where the bathroom was. My own children chose their sister-in-law's mother's spa day over supporting their mother's lifelong dream. That's when I realized I was done being invisible in my own family. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how a 62-year-old retired English teacher ended up having the worst and best day of her life simultaneously. 3 years ago, after decades of grading papers and nurturing other people's children, I finally decided to write the novel I'd been carrying in my heart since I was 20. Not some great American masterpiece, mind you, just a simple story about a woman finding her voice later in life. Apparently, that was too ambitious for my family's attention span. I'm Sarah Mitchell, and I spent 35 years teaching high school English in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I raised 2 children mostly on my own after their father decided family life wasn't fulfilling his potential when Marcus was 12 and Rachel was 9. I worked double shifts tutoring to pay for their college educations, their weddings, their down payments. I was the reliable one, the one who showed up, the one who never complained. The book launch was scheduled for 2 p.m. on Saturday at Morrison's Books, a cozy independent bookstore downtown. I'd invited exactly 7 people: Marcus, his wife Jessica, Rachel, her husband David, and my 3 precious grandchildren. Not exactly a massive guest list, but these were the only people whose presence mattered to me. Friday night, Jessica called. "Sarah, I'm so sorry, but tomorrow isn't going to work for us." Her voice had that practiced tone of false regret I'd heard countless times. Beverly planned this amazing spa day for all the women, and she's been looking forward to it for months. "You understand, right?" Beverly, my son's mother-in-law, who treated Jessica like a princess and viewed me as the annoying former owner of her precious Marcus. The woman who threw elaborate birthday parties for my grandchildren and somehow forgot to invite me half the time. "It's my book launch." "Jessica," I said carefully, "I've been working on this for 3 years." "I know, sweetie, but family comes first. Beverly specifically requested that I bring the kids. She's rented this incredible spa in Des Moines for the whole day. The girls will love it." Family comes first. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus got on the phone. "Mom, you know how important these family relationships are. Jessica's parents have been so good to us, we can't disappoint them. 24 years of raising that boy, and this is what I got. What about your relationship with me, Marcus?" "Don't be dramatic, Mom. It's just a book signing. We'll buy the book later." Just a book signing. 3 years of early mornings before school, late nights after grading, weekends spent researching and writing while they were off living their busy, important lives. Just a book signing. Rachel called an hour later. "Mom, I heard about the spa thing. David and I were planning to come, but now it feels weird being the only ones there. Maybe we should reschedule for when everyone can make it." And there it was, the final nail in the coffin of my maternal illusions. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I dressed carefully in my best navy suit, the one I'd bought for Marcus's wedding. I did my makeup twice, wanting to look professional and confident. I was going to make the best of this disaster if it killed me. Morrison's Books had set up a small display with 15 copies of Second Chances, my novel about a teacher who discovers love and adventure after retirement. The irony of that title wasn't lost on me either, sitting there alone while other people's families browsed the shelves around me. Mrs. Henderson, the store owner, tried to be encouraging. "Sometimes the best book events are intimate," she said, refilling my water glass. "More meaningful conversations." Meaningful conversations with whom? The college student who asked if I was giving out free bookmarks? The elderly man who wondered if my book had large print? By 4 p.m., I'd sold exactly 3 copies, one to Mrs. Henderson herself, one to my former colleague Janet Morrison, no relation to the bookstore, and one to a kind stranger who said she admired my persistence. I drove home in silence, my boxes of unsold books in the back seat like witnesses to my humiliation. The house felt different when I walked in, not empty, but expectant, like it was waiting for something to happen. That's when I saw the photos on my mantelpiece with new eyes. Me at Marcus's graduation, standing slightly behind Jessica's parents. Me at Rachel's wedding, cropped out of half the pictures. Me at every birthday party, holiday gathering, and family celebration, Always present, but never central. Always supporting, but never supported. I poured myself a glass of wine, a good bottle I'd been saving for the celebration that never happened, and made a decision that had been building in my heart for years. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I prefer to think of it as justice served at exactly the right temperature. That night, I didn't sleep. I planned. Sunday morning dawned crisp and clear, the kind of October day that makes you believe in new beginnings. I made myself a proper breakfast, something I rarely did anymore, and sat at my kitchen table with my coffee and a legal pad. You know what's funny about being taken for granted? People stop noticing you're even there until suddenly you're not. My family had gotten so comfortable with my predictable presence that they'd forgotten I was a person with feelings, dreams, and choices. Well, they were about to get a masterclass in Sarah Mitchell's decision-making abilities. I started with a list. Not a grocery list or a to-do list, but a reckoning. 35 years of teachers' organization habits die hard, and I needed to see everything laid out clearly before I acted. Financial support provided over the years. Marcus's college tuition, $47,000. Rachel's college tuition, $52,000. Marcus's wedding contribution, $15,000. Rachel's wedding contribution, $18,000. Down payment help for Marcus's house, $25,000. Down payment help for Rachel's condo, $20,000. Various emergency loans never repaid, approximately $12,000. Babysitting services provided free of charge, roughly 500 hours per year for 10 years. The numbers were staggering when I wrote them out. Nearly $200,000 in direct financial support, plus a decade of free childcare that would have cost them thousands more. And what had I gotten in return? Empty promises to make it up to me later, perfunctory birthday cards signed by grandchildren who barely knew me, and yesterday's humiliation. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the photos from Beverly's spa day that Jessica had posted on social media. My grandchildren laughing in fluffy bathrobes, getting their nails done, faces glowing with happiness. The caption read, "Best Saturday ever with our favorite grandmother. #blessed #family #spayday, our favorite grandmother. Not their only grandmother, but their favorite one, the one who mattered." I closed the app and opened my banking website instead. You see, what my family never understood was that their old mom wasn't just some retired teacher living on a pension. 35 years of careful saving, smart investments, and modest living had left me quite comfortable. The house was paid off, my retirement account was healthy, and I'd inherited a nice nest egg from my parents. I wasn't wealthy by rich people's standards, but by normal standards I was doing just fine. More importantly, I was the beneficiary of a life insurance policy my ex-husband had been required to maintain after our divorce. The irresponsible man who'd abandoned us had at least done one thing right. He died last year and left me $300,000 I'd never told my children about. Not out of secrecy, but because I'd learned that telling my family about money was like ringing a dinner bell for wolves. I made my first call at 10 a.m. Morrison and Associates, this is Linda speaking. Hi Linda, this is Sarah Mitchell. I need to speak with Tom Morrison about updating my will. Tom had handled my divorce 20 years ago and had been gently suggesting I update my estate planning ever since. He was going to be very surprised by the conversation we were about to have. Sarah, how did the book launch go yesterday? Even my lawyer remembered my book launch. Let's just say it gave me some clarity about my priorities. Can you see me tomorrow morning? Of course. Is everything all right? Everything's about to be perfect. After hanging up with Tom, I made my second call. First National Bank, Trust Department, this is Patricia. Patricia, this is Sarah Mitchell. I need to establish an educational trust fund. Can you walk me through the process? By noon, I had 3 appointments scheduled for Monday morning. Tom Morrison at 9 a.m., the bank at 11 a.m., and my financial advisor at 2 p.m. I was going to be a very busy woman. I spent the afternoon doing something I hadn't done in months, reading for pleasure. I curled up in my favorite chair with a cup of tea and lost myself in someone else's story, far away from spa days and ungrateful children. Around 5 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. How did the book thing go yesterday? The book thing. 3 years of work reduced to the book thing. I typed back, it was illuminating. He responded immediately. That's great, Mom. Sold a lot of books? I learned exactly where I stand with the people who matter most to me. I didn't respond. Let him wonder. That evening, I did something else I hadn't done in years. I called my sister Margaret in Phoenix. Margaret, who'd moved away 20 years ago and had been trying to convince me to visit ever since. Sarah, what a wonderful surprise. How are you, honey? I'm having an awakening. Maggie, a long overdue awakening. About time. What's the catalyst? I told her about the book launch, about the spa day, about 30 years of being everyone's backup plan. Margaret listened without interrupting, making the occasional sympathetic noise. So what are you going to do about it? She asked when I finished. Something I should have done years ago. Something that's going to make them realize exactly what they've been taking for granted. I'm proud of you, sister. And whatever you're planning, you have my full support. How's the guest room situation at your place? Margaret laughed. The guest room is always ready for you. Sarah Mitchell. Always. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet house and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Anticipation. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day, and for the first time in decades, I was the one writing the script. But I had one card left to play that they never saw coming. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that makes big decisions feel inevitable. I dressed in my best black suit, the one that made me feel like I meant business, and drove downtown with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Tom Morrison's office hadn't changed much since my divorce proceedings. Same oak furniture, same law books, same smell of coffee and important documents. But I was definitely not the same woman who'd sat in that chair 20 years ago, desperately trying to figure out how to survive my husband's abandonment. Sarah, you look wonderful, Tom said, gesturing for me to sit. I'm sorry to hear the book launch didn't go as hoped. Actually, it went exactly as it needed to. Sometimes disappointment is just clarity wearing work clothes. Tom raised an eyebrow. He'd always appreciated my teacher metaphors. All right, let's talk about what you want to change. I pulled out my legal pad with its neat columns and bullet points. I want to completely restructure my will and establish several trusts. My current will leaves everything equally to Marcus and Rachel. I want to change that. Okay, what kind of changes are we talking about? I want to establish educational trusts for my 3 grandchildren, Lily, Tommy, and Emma. Full college tuition, graduate school if they choose, but with specific conditions attached. Tom started taking notes. What kind of conditions? The money can only be accessed if they maintain a relationship with me. Not forced visits or fake affection, but genuine connection. Letters, phone calls, spending time together. If they're too busy for their grandmother, they're too busy for their grandmother's money. That's actually quite reasonable. What about your children? I took a deep breath. This was the hard part, but also the most necessary part. Marcus and Rachel will each receive $10,000. Enough to be generous, not enough to matter. Tom's pen stopped moving. Sarah, your estate is worth considerably more than $20,000. What happens to the rest? $50,000 goes to the Cedar Rapids Public Library for their literacy programs, $25,000 to the local animal shelter, $25,000 to the food bank. I paused, savoring the next part. And the remainder goes to Margaret, my sister, who's been asking me to visit for 20 years while my own children can't be bothered to attend my book launch. The silence in the office was profound. Tom set down his pen and leaned back in his chair. Sarah, I have to ask, is this about yesterday, or is this about a pattern of behavior you've been dealing with? It's about 30 years of being treated like hired help instead of a mother. It's about grandchildren who know their other grandmother's favorite restaurant, but don't know mine. It's about children who view me as an ATM with emotional problems, rather than a person deserving of basic respect. I pulled out my phone and showed him Jessica's Instagram post from Saturday. This was posted while I was sitting alone at my book signing. My daughter-in-law called it their day with their favorite grandmother. Not their only grandmother, their favorite. Tom studied the photos, his expression growing more serious. Have you talked to your children about how you feel? For years, Tom. And the response is always the same. I'm being too sensitive, too dramatic, too needy. Well, maybe it's time I lived up to those accusations. He nodded slowly. I can draft these documents, Sarah, but I want you to think about this for a few days. Estate planning done in anger sometimes creates regrets later. I'm not angry. Tom, I'm awake. There's a difference. After leaving Tom's office, I drove to First National Bank feeling lighter than I had in months. The trust department was on the second floor, all marble and mahogany and the quiet confidence of old money. Patricia Wells, the trust officer, was exactly what you'd expect. Perfectly dressed, perfectly professional, and perfectly equipped to help wealthy people protect their assets from unworthy relatives. Mrs. Mitchell, please tell me about these educational trusts you want to establish. I explained my vision. 3 separate trusts, each funded with $75,000, designed to pay for my grandchildren's education from kindergarten through graduate school, but with strings attached. The children must maintain a genuine relationship with me to access the funds, not performative visits or obligatory phone calls, but real connection. I want them to know their grandmother, not just my checkbook. Patricia nodded approvingly. We see a lot of families struggle with entitlement issues. These kinds of relationship requirements are becoming more common. How do you want to define genuine relationship? Monthly contact, calls, letters, visits, participation in family events when invited, basic courtesy and respect. If they're old enough to receive the money, they're old enough to understand the conditions. And if they don't maintain the relationship, the funds go to literacy programs instead. By 2 p.m., I was sitting in my financial advisor's office, feeling like a general planning the perfect strategic campaign. Sarah, you want to do what with your investment portfolio? I want to liquidate my parents' inheritance and gift the maximum allowable amount to my sister Margaret, this year, next year, and every year until I've transferred as much as legally possible without tax penalties. Robert Hayes had been managing my investments for 15 years, and I'd never seen him look quite so concerned. That's $17,000 per year to Margaret, plus $17,000 to her husband if she's married. Are you sure about this? Margaret has been trying to get me to visit Arizona for 20 years. She calls every week, remembers my birthday, asks about my book. She deserves to benefit from family money more than children who can't remember to show up when it matters. Sarah, if this is about your book launch, it's not about one day, Robert. It's about 20 years of one days. 20 years of being everyone's last priority while somehow remaining everyone's first call when they need something. I left Robert's office with instructions to begin the transfers immediately. By the end of the week, Margaret would be $34,000 richer, and my ungrateful children would be that much poorer in inheritance terms. Monday morning, I made the call I should have made years ago. The drive home felt different. The autumn trees looked brighter, the sky seemed clearer, and for the first time in decades, I felt like I was driving toward something instead of away from it. That evening, I called Margaret again. Maggie, I've had quite a productive day. Oh, how do you feel about having a very wealthy sister? Margaret's laughter was pure joy. Sarah Mitchell, what have you done? What I should have done years ago. I've remembered that blood doesn't make family, behavior does. And I've decided to invest in the family members who've actually been treating me like family. By Tuesday, they'd figure out what I'd done. But first, I had one more call to make. Tuesday morning, I woke up with the strange sensation of having shed a tremendous weight overnight. For the first time in years, I had nothing to prove to anyone and no one to please except myself. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table with the morning paper, actually reading it instead of skimming through it while mentally planning someone else's schedule. This is what retirement was supposed to feel like, I realized. Not like being put out to pasture, but like finally being free to graze wherever you wanted. My phone buzzed at 8:30 a.m. Rachel, Mom, Jessica said something weird yesterday about you seeming upset about the spa day. Are you okay? There it was, the casual concern, the assumption that I was the problem, the complete lack of awareness that missing my book launch might have been hurtful. Classic Rachel. I'm fine, honey, just making some changes. Changes? What kind of changes? Life changes, perspective changes, priority changes. Mom, you're being cryptic. What's going on? I looked out my kitchen window at the maple tree I'd planted when Rachel was 5. She'd helped me dig the hole, her little hands covered in dirt, chattering non-stop about how we were giving the tree a home, just like it was giving us shade. When had we stopped planting things together? Rachel, when's the last time you called me just to talk? What do you mean? Not to ask for babysitting, not to get a recipe, not to borrow something? When's the last time you called because you wanted to hear my voice? The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if we'd been disconnected. Mom, I call you all the time. You call me when you need something. That's different. That's not fair. I'm busy, I have a full-time job and kids and I had a full-time job and kids too, but I always made time for my mother. Another silence. Then, is this about the book thing? The book thing. Again. 3 years of my life reduced to the book thing. This is about 32 years of being your mother and slowly realizing that somewhere along the way I became your convenience instead of your priority. Mom, that's not true. Rachel, I have to go. I have errands to run. I hung up before she could respond, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty about ending a conversation on my terms. My errands were actually just one errand, but it was a big one. I drove to Cedar Rapids Community College, where they offered adult education classes and had recently started a creative writing program. The continuing education office was bustling with activity. Older adults signing up for pottery classes, computer courses, and book clubs. This was my tribe, I realized. People who were still growing, still learning, still becoming. I'd like to sign up for the Advanced Creative Writing Workshop, I told the woman behind the desk. Wonderful. Are you working on something specific? My second novel, actually. The first one just came out. How exciting. What's it about? For the next 10 minutes, I talked about my book with someone who was genuinely interested, who asked thoughtful questions, who treated my work like it mattered. It was a revelation. We meet Thursday evenings, she said, handing me the paperwork. I think you'll love our group. We have several published authors, and everyone's very supportive. Supportive. What a concept. I drove home feeling like I'd just enrolled in a new life instead of a writing class. My phone had been buzzing with texts while I was in the office, but I ignored it until I was safely back in my kitchen. Marcus, Rachel said you were upset about something. Call me. Jessica. Sarah, I hope you know the spa day wasn't meant to hurt your feelings. Rachel. Mom, can we please talk? You're scaring me. Marcus. Seriously, call me back. This isn't like you. This isn't like me. They were right about that. The old me would have already called back, apologizing for worrying them, reassuring them that everything was fine, minimizing my feelings to make them comfortable. The new me made lunch instead. Around 2 p.m., my doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Marcus's car in my driveway. He'd actually driven over. That was either touching or alarming, depending on how you looked at it. I opened the door to find my son looking genuinely concerned, which would have been more meaningful if it hadn't taken a family crisis to generate that expression. Mom, what's going on? Rachel said you were talking about changes and priorities, and Jessica feels terrible about the spa day. Come in, Marcus. Would you like some coffee? I want to know what's wrong. Nothing's wrong. Actually, everything's finally right. We sat in my living room, the same room where I'd helped him with homework, where we'd watched movies on sick days, where I'd waited up for him when he was a teenager. Good memories, all of them. But memories shouldn't be the only foundation of a relationship. Marcus, what's my favorite color? He blinked. What? My favorite color. What is it? Mom, I don't understand. It's purple. It's been purple for 30 years. I wear it all the time. I decorate with it. I mention it constantly. But you don't know that, do you? His face went slightly red. I never really thought about it. What's my favorite restaurant? Another blank look. What kind of movies do I like? What are my hobbies besides reading? What do I do with my free time? Mom, why are you asking me this stuff? Because yesterday, I realized that your mother-in-law knows more about your children than you know about your mother. She knows their favorite colors, their favorite foods, their hopes and dreams. But you don't know mine. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he'd had since childhood when he was overwhelmed. I never thought. You're just Mom. You've always been there. I guess I figured you didn't need what? Attention? Interest? Love that wasn't conditional on my usefulness? That's not fair. I love you. I know you do. But you don't know me. And after yesterday, I realized that's partly my fault. I taught you to take me for granted by always being available, always saying yes, always putting your needs before mine. So what are you saying? I looked at my son, really looked at him. Still handsome at 35. Still carrying that slight arrogance that came from never having to worry about his mother's love. Still assuming that whatever was wrong could be fixed with the right words or a nice gesture. I'm saying that things are going to be different from now on. I'm saying that I'm done being everyone's safety net while being no one's priority. Mom, you're our priority. Marcus, you chose your mother-in-law's spa day over your mother's book launch. That tells me everything I need to know about priorities. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, we can do something for your book. Maybe a family dinner. We'll invite everyone. It's too late for that. What do you mean? Too late. I smiled, and I could tell from his expression that it wasn't a reassuring smile. I mean that yesterday taught me something important about myself. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was, and I deserve better than I've been accepting. So what happens now? Now you go home to your wife and children, and you decide what kind of relationship you want to have with your mother going forward. A real one, or the pretend one we've been having. After Marcus left, I sat in my quiet house and felt the weight of change settling around me like snow. Tomorrow would bring consequences, phone calls, probably some tears and accusations. But tonight, I was just a woman who'd finally remembered her own worth. By Tuesday, they'd figure out what I'd done. Wednesday arrived with an urgency that felt different from my usual quiet mornings. I could sense something shifting in the universe, or maybe just in my family's awareness that their reliable mother had gone off script. I was enjoying my coffee and reading when my phone rang at 9:15 a.m. Rachel again, but this time her voice had an edge I rarely heard. Mom, I talked to Marcus last night. What did you mean when you told him it was too late for a family dinner? Interesting. So they'd been discussing me, trying to figure out how to manage whatever crisis they thought I was having. Typical. I meant exactly what I said, honey. Some opportunities don't come twice. But we want to celebrate your book. We can plan something nice. Rachel, do you remember my birthday last year? Of course I do. We took you to dinner. Where? A pause. We went to that Italian place you like. I don't like Italian food. Sweetheart, I'm lactose intolerant, remember? We went to Romano's because it was convenient for you and David. I ate salad and pretended to enjoy myself while you all had pasta. Mom, why didn't you say something? I've been saying something for years. You just haven't been listening. I could hear her breathing on the other end, probably trying to figure out how to navigate this conversation. Rachel had always been my peacemaker, the one who smoothed over conflicts and found compromises. But you can't compromise with someone who's finally stopped compromising themselves. What do you want from us, Mom? I want you to want to be in my life, not just expect me to be in yours. After Rachel hung up, more confused than ever, I decided to do something I'd been putting off. I drove to the bank to check on the status of my trust establishments and money transfers. Patricia Wells greeted me with the kind of professional warmth that comes from dealing with wealthy people making dramatic financial decisions. Mrs. Mitchell, everything is proceeding smoothly. The educational trusts are established, and we've begun the process of funding them. Your sister's gifts are also being processed. Excellent. And the documentation? All signed and notarized. Your grandchildren will receive letters explaining the trusts when they turn 16, along with the relationship requirements. I smiled, thinking about Lily reading that letter in 4 years, learning that her grandmother had set aside $75,000 for her education, contingent on actually maintaining a relationship with me. Would she be surprised? Would she even remember who I was by then? Mrs. Wells, what happens if the relationship requirements aren't met? The funds transfer to the literacy programs you specified. We handle several educational trusts with similar conditions. They're quite effective at encouraging genuine family connections. On my way home, I stopped at the grocery store for the first time in weeks without consulting anyone else's schedule or preferences. I bought expensive cheese, good wine, fresh flowers, and ingredients for recipes I wanted to try. Cooking for one suddenly felt like freedom instead of loneliness. My phone buzzed as I was loading groceries into my car. Jessica, the daughter-in-law I'd bent over backwards to please for 10 years. Sarah, could we talk? I'm really worried that you're upset about Saturday. Worried. Not sorry. Not apologetic. Worried. Worried about the consequences, probably. I'm not upset, Jessica. I'm enlightened. Marcus said you were asking him strange questions about favorite colors and restaurants. Are you feeling okay? I'm feeling wonderful. For the first time in years, I'm feeling like myself. Sarah, I want you to know that the spa day wasn't meant to exclude you. Beverly just wanted to treat the girls. And, Jessica, let me ask you something. In 10 years of marriage to my son, how many times have you invited me to do something special? Not family obligations, not holidays where I'm expected to cook or babysit, but something fun that you actually wanted to share with me? The silence was answer enough. I see. And how many times has Beverly been invited to your girls' nights, your shopping trips, your spontaneous adventures? That's different. Beverly and I have a special bond. Yes, you do, and I'm happy for you both. But you can't be surprised that I've decided to invest my time and energy in people who actually want my company. What does that mean? It means that from now on, I'm going to be as available to you as you've been interested in me. I hung up and finished loading my groceries, feeling lighter with each bag I placed in my car. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I spent 3 hours reading in my garden, with my phone on silent. No checking for messages, no worrying about who might need me, no feeling guilty for taking time for myself. Around 5 p.m., I finally looked at my phone. 17 missed calls. 6 from Marcus, 4 from Rachel, 3 from Jessica, 2 from David, and 2 from numbers I didn't recognize. The voicemails were increasingly frantic. Mom, call me back. Marcus. Sarah, please call. The kids are asking where Grandma is. Jessica. Mom, what's happening? You're scaring us. Rachel, Mrs. Mitchell, this is Tom Morrison. Please call me when you get this message. My lawyer. Sarah, this is Margaret. Call me immediately. Something's happened. My sister. My heart jumped. Margaret sounded genuinely panicked, not like the others who were just confused and frustrated by my new unavailability. I called her back first. Sarah, thank God. Are you all right? I'm fine, Maggie. Why wouldn't I be? Marcus called me. He's convinced something terrible has happened to you. He said you've been acting strange, asking weird questions, and now you're not answering your phone. He wanted to know if I'd talked to you, if you'd seemed depressed or suicidal. I nearly dropped the phone. Suicidal? He said you told him some changes were permanent, that it was too late for family dinners, that you were done being everyone's safety net. Sarah, he's talking about calling the police for a wellness check. The audacity was breathtaking. I finally stopped being available 24/7, and they assume I'm having a mental breakdown. Maggie, I'm not suicidal. I'm not depressed. I'm not having a breakdown. I'm having a breakthrough. What kind of breakthrough? The kind where I finally realize I don't have to set myself on fire to keep other people warm. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then she started laughing. Oh, honey, you finally found your backbone. Something like that. But apparently, when a woman stops being convenient, people assume she's mentally ill. What are you going to do? What I should have done years ago. I'm going to let them figure out how to have a relationship with me that isn't based on what I can do for them. And if they can't, then I'll know where I really stood all along. After talking to Margaret, I sat in my quiet house and made a decision. Tomorrow, I would call Marcus back, but not to reassure him, not to apologize for worrying him, and definitely not to explain myself. Tomorrow, I would tell him the truth about what I'd done with my will, my money, and my remaining years. The first sign something was wrong came at 3 p.m. Thursday morning brought the kind of autumn clarity that makes everything seem possible. I dressed carefully, not for anyone else's approval, but because I wanted to feel strong for the conversation I was about to have. At exactly 10 a.m., I called Marcus. Mom, thank God, we've been worried sick. Are you okay? I'm perfect, Marcus. I've never been better. You didn't answer your phone yesterday, for hours. That's not like you. You're right. It's not like the old me. The new me has boundaries. I could hear him take a deep breath, probably counting to 10, like I'd taught him when he was 7 years old and prone to tantrums. Mom, can we please talk about what's bothering you? We want to fix this. There's nothing to fix, sweetheart. I've simply made some changes that I want to share with you. What kind of changes? I've rewritten my will. The silence on the other end of the phone was so complete, I thought we'd been disconnected. You what? I spent Monday morning with my lawyer, restructuring my entire estate. I thought you should know since it affects you. Mom, you're scaring me. What kind of restructuring? Well, I've established educational trusts for Lily, Tommy, and Emma. $75,000 each for their schooling, from kindergarten through graduate school if they choose. That's wonderful, Mom. The kids will be so grateful. There are conditions, of course. What kind of conditions? They have to maintain a genuine relationship with me. Not obligatory visits or fake phone calls, but real connection. If they can't be bothered to know their grandmother, they don't need their grandmother's money. Another silence. Then, that seems reasonable. What else? I've donated significant amounts to the library, the animal shelter, and the food bank. Causes I actually care about. Okay? And I've begun transferring large portions of my liquid assets to Margaret. Aunt Margaret? Why? Because she spent 20 years treating me like family, while you've spent 20 years treating me like staff. Mom? That's not… Marcus, let me finish. You and Rachel will each inherit $10,000. Enough to be generous, not enough to retire on. The explosion I expected came right on schedule. 10,000? Mom, that's insane. What about the house? What about your investments? That's our inheritance. No, Marcus, that's my money, my house, my choice about what to do with it. You can't be serious. We're your children. Are you? Because children typically show up for important events in their parents' lives. Children usually know their parents' favorite color, favorite food, favorite anything. Children don't choose their in-laws over their mother. This is about the stupid book launch again. This is about 35 years of raising ungrateful children who think being born gives them lifetime access to my resources without having to provide anything in return. I could hear Jessica in the background, her voice sharp and demanding. Marcus must have told her what I was saying. Mom, you're not thinking clearly. This is a huge decision. Maybe you should talk to someone. I did talk to someone. I talked to my lawyer, my financial advisor, and my sister, all of whom think I'm making excellent choices. A therapist. Mom, maybe grief counseling. You've been acting strange since Dad… Your father died 4 years ago, Marcus. This has nothing to do with grief and everything to do with clarity. Jessica grabbed the phone. Sarah, you cannot do this to our family. I'm not doing anything to your family. I'm doing something for myself. Those children are counting on their inheritance. We've made plans. What plans, Jessica? College funds, the house renovation, Marcus's business expansion. Ah, so you've been spending my money before I'm dead. How presumptuous. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. You've been counting on inheriting enough to fund your lifestyle improvements. Well, congratulations. You've just learned an important lesson about counting unhatched chickens. I hung up before she could respond and immediately called my lawyer. Tom, it's Sarah Mitchell. I need you to prepare a document stating that I'm of sound mind and body, making these decisions voluntarily, and not under any form of duress or mental incompetence. Sarah, has someone suggested you're not competent? My son just implied I need therapy because I've stopped letting his family use me as a bank. I'll prepare the document today. Do you want to come in for a mental competency evaluation as well? Just to have it on record? Yes, and Tom, I want copies sent to all my children, their spouses, and my sister. I want there to be no question about my state of mind when I made these decisions. After hanging up with Tom, I sat in my kitchen and waited. I didn't have to wait long. The doorbell rang at 11:30 a.m. Then it rang again, and again. Finally, someone started pounding on the door. I opened it to find Marcus, Rachel, Jessica, and David all standing on my porch, looking like an intervention committee. Behind them, I could see neighbors starting to peek out their windows. Well, I said calmly, this is quite a delegation. Come in before you give the whole neighborhood a show. They filed into my living room like pallbearers, all grim faces and barely contained panic. Rachel spoke first. Mom, we need to talk about these changes you're making. What would you like to know? We want to know why you're punishing us, David said, speaking up for the first time. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm rewarding the people who've actually treated me well. By cutting us out of your will… Marcus's voice was getting louder. by putting my money where my heart has been all along, with people who want me in their lives, not just in their bank accounts. Jessica leaned forward. Sarah, think about the grandchildren. They need security, college funds. They have college funds, provided they maintain relationships with the grandmother who's funding their education. Those conditions are manipulative. I looked at Jessica for a long moment. You mean like manipulating me into missing my own book launch for a spa day? The room went completely silent. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're all going to go home and think about what kind of relationship you actually want with me. Not what you expect from me, not what you need from me, but what you want with me. And if we don't meet your standards, Rachel asked, tears starting to form, then you'll have your answer about what I was really worth to you. After they left, angry, confused, and finally understanding that their convenient mother had permanently changed the rules, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my back deck. My phone started ringing almost immediately, but I let it go to voicemail. I had a writing class tonight, and for the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be, doing exactly what I wanted to do, with people who valued what I had to offer. What they found in that safety deposit box changed everything. Friday morning, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing like an angry hornet. It was 6:47 a.m., and I already had 12 missed calls. By the time I made coffee, that number had grown to 18. Something had shifted overnight. The frantic energy in their voicemails was different, not just confused or hurt, but genuinely panicked. Rachel's voice was shaking in the latest message. Mom, please call us back. We found something, and we need to talk to you right now. What could they have possibly found? I'd been careful with my planning, meticulous with my documentation. Everything was legal, witnessed, and properly executed. My phone rang as I was pouring my first cup. Marcus, for the 5th time in an hour. Mom, thank God, where were you? Sleeping. It's not even 7 in the morning, Marcus. We need you to come over. Now. All of us are at my house. Why would I do that? Because we found Dad's safety deposit box key in Rachel's basement, and when we opened it, his voice cracked. Mom, please just come over. My blood went cold. David's safety deposit box. I'd completely forgotten about it after the divorce, assumed it was empty or closed years ago. What could possibly be in there that had my entire family in crisis mode? Marcus, what did you find? I can't talk about this over the phone. Please, Mom, just come. Against my better judgment, I drove to Marcus's house an hour later. The entire family was gathered in his living room like mourners at a wake. Jessica's eyes were red from crying. Rachel looked devastated, and even David seemed shaken. Show me, I said without preamble. Marcus handed me a manila envelope with my name written on it in David's familiar handwriting. Inside were documents I'd never seen before, life insurance policies, investment accounts, and a letter dated just 6 months before he died of his heart attack 4 years ago. I read the letter twice before the words fully registered. Sarah, it began, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hope my children have finally found the courage to show you what I never had the courage to say in person. I know I failed as a husband and father. I know I abandoned my family when they needed me most, and I know that no amount of money can make up for 20 years of absence. But I want my children to understand what they have in their mother. You raised them alone when I was too selfish and scared to stay. You worked multiple jobs to give them opportunities I never provided. You attended every school play, every graduation, every milestone that mattered, while I was off finding myself and failing at second chances. The money in these accounts, $847,000 in investments and life insurance, was supposed to be my way of making amends. But I realize now that money isn't what they need to understand. They need to understand that their mother is the strongest, most selfless person I ever knew, and they've been taking that strength for granted. I've watched from a distance as they've treated you like their personal assistant rather than the woman who sacrificed her entire youth for their happiness. I've seen how they expect your help but rarely offer their presence. I've seen you make excuses for their neglect while continuing to give them everything you have. So I'm leaving this money to you, Sarah, with one request. Don't give it to them unless they earn it. Not with grand gestures or guilty apologies, but with the kind of consistent love and respect you've been giving them for 30 years. They need to learn what I learned too late, that having you in their lives isn't a right. It's a privilege. I love you, Sarah. I always did. I was just too proud and stupid to show it properly. David. The room was silent except for the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. $847,000. Money I never knew existed, left to me by the man who'd walked away from our family but had apparently been watching from afar. "Mom," Rachel whispered. "We had no idea." I looked up at their faces. Marcus pale with shock, Jessica calculating the numbers, David uncomfortable with the family drama, and Rachel genuinely heartbroken. "When did you find this?" "Yesterday afternoon," Marcus said. "After we left your house." Rachel remembered that Dad had given her a safety deposit box key years ago for emergency access. We never thought to check it because we assumed it was empty. "We opened it last night," Rachel continued. "There were the investment statements, the insurance policies, and the letter. Mom, he left you almost $1 million that you never claimed. And more importantly," Marcus added quietly, "he told us exactly what we've been doing to you." I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. $1 million. On top of everything else I already had. David's final gift wasn't just money, it was vindication. "What happens now?" Jessica asked. I looked around the room at these people who'd spent the last week learning hard truths about themselves. And I made a decision that surprised even me. Now you all go home and think about what you want your relationship with me to look like going forward. Not because of money, not because of guilt, but because you actually want me in your lives. "But Mom," Rachel started, "the inheritance. The money will be there when you figure out how to love me without conditions. If you figure out how to love me without conditions." I left them sitting in Marcus's living room, probably calculating numbers and having conversations they should have had years ago. But there was something I hadn't told them yet. Something that made all the money in the world irrelevant. Saturday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was in my garden, deadheading the last roses of the season, when I heard a car door slam in my driveway. Through the fence, I could see my sister Margaret walking toward my front door with determined steps. "Maggie," I called out. "What are you doing here?" She turned toward my voice, and I could see she'd been crying. "Sarah Mitchell, you have exactly 30 seconds to explain why you've been lying to me for 3 months." My hands went still on the rose stems. "I don't know what you mean. Dr. Patterson's office called me yesterday. Apparently, I'm listed as your emergency contact, and they've been trying to reach you about missed appointments." "Chemotherapy appointment, Sarah." The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire I'd been trying to keep hidden. I set down my garden shears and looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw the kind of hurt that comes from being shut out by someone you love. "How long have you known?" she asked. 3 months and 2 weeks. "And you didn't tell me because—" I pulled off my gardening gloves, buying time to find the right words. "Because once you tell people you're dying, that becomes all you are to them. The sick person, the one everyone pities and hovers over and treats like they're already gone. You're dying? Stage 3 pancreatic cancer. Maybe 6 months if I'm lucky, maybe 3 if I'm not." Margaret's face crumpled. "Oh, Sarah. Don't cry, Maggie. Please don't cry. I've had 3 months to get used to this, and I've made my peace with it. Is that why you changed your will? Why you've been pulling away from the kids?" I gestured toward my back deck. "Let's sit down. There's more you need to know." We settled into my patio chairs, the same ones where I'd sat just a week ago planning what my family thought was revenge, but was actually something much more complicated. "The book launch," I began, "was supposed to be my goodbye party. Not that I told anyone that. I wrote that novel as a love letter to my life, to all the experiences I'd had and all the dreams I'd finally pursued. I wanted my children there, not because I needed their support for my writing career, but because I needed them there for my farewell. And when they didn't show up, when they chose Beverly's spa day instead, I realized something devastating. They didn't know me well enough to know this mattered. They didn't know me well enough to know anything mattered." Margaret reached across the small table and took my hand. "So you decided to teach them. I decided to protect them, all of them, but especially the grandchildren." "Protect them from what?" I looked out at my garden, at the trees I'd planted and the flowers I'd nurtured, knowing I'd never see another full cycle of seasons. "Maggie, My kids are going to inherit almost $2 million between my estate and David's surprise money. Do you know what that kind of sudden wealth does to people who haven't learned the value of anything? It destroys them. It destroys them. But if they have to earn a relationship with me to access their children's trust funds, if they have to learn to value people over money, maybe there's hope. The relationship requirements in the trusts aren't punishment. They're protection. I'm trying to save my grandchildren from parents who might love money more than they love each other. Margaret was quiet for a long moment, processing everything I'd told her. What about your treatment? Are you fighting this? I did 2 rounds of chemotherapy. It bought me some time, but not much, and the quality of life. I shook my head. I decided I'd rather have 6 good months than 12 miserable ones. Do the kids know? No, and I'm not sure I'm going to tell them. Sarah, they deserve to know. Do they? They've had 30 years to know me, to love me, to show up for me. If it takes a cancer diagnosis to make them care, then they don't really care about me. They care about their guilt. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. 2 sisters who'd shared a lifetime of secrets and sorrows. Finally, Margaret spoke. What can I do? Be my sister. Not my caregiver, not my nurse, just my sister. Help me have the best 6 months possible. And the money I've been receiving? I smiled. That's real. You've been the family member who actually treated me like family. You deserve to benefit from family money. My phone buzzed with another call from Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. They're persistent, Margaret observed. They're scared. They've realized they might lose access to the money, and they're panicking. Is that all they care about? I hope not, but I'm about to find out. That evening, alone in my quiet house, I made a decision. It was time to accelerate the timeline. I picked up my phone and sent identical text messages to Marcus and Rachel. Family meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. My house. Come alone. No spouses, no children. There are things you need to know. Then I called Dr. Patterson's office and scheduled an appointment for Monday morning. It was time to find out what my children were really made of. Sunday at 2 p.m., Marcus and Rachel sat in my living room, looking like teenagers called to the principal's office. I could see the questions in their eyes, the worry lines that had appeared since they'd found David's letter, the careful way they were watching me for signs of whatever crisis they thought I was having. Thank you for coming without your spouses, I began. What I'm about to share with you is between us, and you'll need to decide for yourselves how and when to tell your families. Mom, you're scaring us, Rachel said softly. Good. Fear is appropriate for what comes next. I had rehearsed this conversation in my mind for days, but sitting here looking at my children, really looking at them, I felt my carefully planned words scatter like leaves in the wind. I'm sick, I said simply. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the neighbor's dog barking 3 houses away. Sick how? Marcus finally asked. Pancreatic cancer, stage 3, diagnosed 3 months ago. Rachel made a sound like she'd been punched in the stomach. Marcus went white as paper. 3 months ago? Rachel whispered. You've known for 3 months and didn't tell us? I've known for 3 months and made some decisions about how I want to spend whatever time I have left. What kind of decisions? Marcus's voice was barely audible. The kind where I stop wasting my energy on people who only value me when it's convenient, and I start investing in relationships that actually matter. We matter, Rachel said, tears starting. We're your children. Are you? Because for the past 3 months, while I've been going to oncology appointments and planning my will and trying to figure out how to make peace with dying, neither of you noticed anything was wrong. The truth of that statement settled over them like a heavy blanket. How long? Marcus asked. 6 months, maybe less. I stopped chemotherapy 2 weeks ago because I decided I'd rather have quality time than quantity time. Rachel was crying now, those silent tears that come from deep grief. Mom, why didn't you tell us? Because I needed to know who you really were before I died. I needed to know if you loved me or just needed me. We love you. Do you? Because love shows up. Love pays attention. Love notices when someone is struggling or scared or slowly disappearing. Marcus leaned forward, his head in his hands. The book launch. That's why it was so important to you. The book launch was my goodbye party. That novel was my love letter to life. I wanted you there because I wanted to share my final accomplishment with the people who mattered most to me. And we chose a spa day, Rachel whispered. You chose a spa day, with the grandmother who actually knows your children's favorite colors, favorite foods, hopes and dreams. The room fell quiet again. Outside, I could hear children playing in someone's backyard, their laughter carrying on the afternoon breeze. Normal Sunday sounds of normal families living normal lives. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now you decide what the next few months look like. I'm done chasing after your love and attention. I'm done being available for everyone else's convenience while being ignored for my own needs. If you want a relationship with me before I die, you're going to have to build it. How? The same way people build any relationship. By showing up, by paying attention, by caring about someone other than yourselves. Rachel wiped her eyes. What about the money? Dad's money. Your will, all of it. What about it? Are you still leaving everything to Aunt Margaret? I studied my daughter's face, looking for signs of what she was really asking. Was this about love or inheritance, grief or greed? Rachel, if your main concern right now is money, then you've answered every question I had about your priorities. That's not. I just want to know what you want from us. I want you to want me alive more than you want me dead and wealthy. The cruelty of that statement hung in the air, but it was honest. For 30 years, I'd softened every hard truth to protect their feelings. I didn't have time for that anymore. We do want you alive, Marcus said quietly. Then prove it. The next 6 months are your audition for whether you get to be in my final chapter or just read about it in the will. After they left shaken, crying, finally understanding the stakes. I sat in my garden as the sun set behind the trees. My phone started ringing almost immediately, but I let the calls go to voicemail. I'd spent a lifetime answering other people's emergencies. Now I was dealing with my own. Margaret called around 8 p.m. How did it go? About as well as telling your children you're dying can go. Do you think they'll step up? We're about to find out. But Maggie, for the first time in my life, I'm not going to make it easy for them. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because the cancer was gone or the pain was better, but because finally, I had told the truth about everything that mattered. The rest was up to them. Monday morning brought something I hadn't experienced in 30 years. My children fighting over who got to take care of me. Marcus called at 7 a.m. Mom, I'm driving you to your doctor's appointment today. I can drive myself. No, you can't. Not anymore. We're not letting you go through this alone. 20 minutes later, Rachel called. Mom, I'm coming over to make you breakfast and take you to the doctor. Marcus is already taking me. Then I'm coming to the appointment too. Rachel, it's just a consultation. We're coming to all of them from now on. Every appointment, every treatment, everything. I hung up feeling something I couldn't quite name. Was this what I'd wanted? Their sudden, frantic attention? Or was this just guilt masquerading as love? The answer came when I arrived at Dr. Patterson's office to find both my children already in the waiting room, along with Jessica, David, and all 3 grandchildren. What is this? I asked. Family support, Marcus said firmly. We're all here for you. I didn't invite any of you to this appointment. We're not asking for permission anymore, Mom, Rachel said. We've been terrible children, and we're here to make up for it. Dr. Patterson was clearly surprised to see my entire family crowding into his office, but he handled it with professional grace. Mrs. Mitchell, how are you feeling since we last talked? I'm fine. These people are my children and grandchildren who apparently just learned about my diagnosis. He nodded diplomatically. Would you like them to stay for our discussion? Before I could answer, Marcus spoke up. We want to know everything. Treatment options, timeline, what we can do to help. Dr. Patterson looked at me for confirmation. I nodded reluctantly. Mrs. Mitchell has stage 3 pancreatic cancer. We tried chemotherapy, but she chose to discontinue treatment 2 weeks ago due to quality of life concerns. What does that mean exactly? Jessica asked. It means your mother-in-law has decided to focus on comfort care rather than aggressive treatment. But there are other options, right? Rachel pressed. Other treatments, clinical trials, something? Dr. Patterson glanced at me again. There are always options, but Mrs. Mitchell has made an informed decision about her care preferences. We want a second opinion, Marcus declared. Third opinion, whatever it takes. I watched this scene unfold with a mixture of warmth and sadness. They were trying so hard to fix something that couldn't be fixed, to make up for 30 years of neglect in 30 days of frantic attention. "Marcus," I said quietly, "this isn't something you can solve with effort. But we can try. We can fight this with you. Where were you when I was fighting it alone for 3 months?" The question silenced the room. "We didn't know," Rachel whispered. "You didn't know because you didn't pay attention. You didn't ask how I was feeling, what I was doing with my days, whether I needed anything beyond babysitting and emergency loans." Little Lily, my 12-year-old granddaughter, spoke up for the first time. "Grandma, I'm sorry we weren't better grandchildren." The simplicity and honesty of her apology broke something loose in my chest. "Oh, sweetheart, you've been perfect grandchildren. This isn't about you." "Then what is it about?" Tommy, my 9-year-old grandson, asked. I looked around the room at these people who shared my blood, my history, my love, even when that love had felt unreciprocated. It's about learning to love people while you have them, not just when you're afraid of losing them. After the appointment, they followed me home like a parade of good intentions. Jessica immediately started cleaning my already clean house. David began researching cancer specialists on his phone. Marcus and Rachel argued over who would stay with me that night. "Stop," I finally said. "All of you, just stop." They froze mid-activity, looking at me with expectant faces. "This isn't what I want." "What do you want?" Rachel asked. "I want you to love me because you choose to, not because you're afraid of losing your inheritance or feeling guilty about being bad children." "The inheritance doesn't matter," Marcus said. "Doesn't it? Because a week ago, you were very upset about the changes to my will. That was before we knew you were sick. So my dying made me worth loving again?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire that wouldn't quite catch. Emma, my 7-year-old granddaughter, climbed onto my lap. "Grandma, do you not want us to love you? I want you to love me the way you love other people you care about. Consistently, without conditions, whether I'm healthy or sick, convenient or inconvenient." "We can do that," Lily said solemnly. "Can you? Can your parents?" I looked at Marcus and Rachel, these grown adults who were trying so hard to fix 30 years of taking me for granted in 30 days of guilty attention. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're all going to go home and think about whether you want to be in my life because you love me or because you're afraid of me dying." "What's the difference?" David asked. "One is about me, the other is about you." But there was something else they didn't know yet, something that would change everything. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my oncologist's office getting news that nobody expected, especially not me. "The tumor has shrunk by 60%, Dr. Patterson said, staring at my latest scans with something approaching bewilderment. "I've never seen anything like this with pancreatic cancer at your stage." My hands were shaking as I processed what he was saying. "What does that mean?" "It means we caught a miracle. Whatever you've been doing differently in the past month, stress reduction, diet changes, family support, something has triggered your body's immune response. The cancer is in retreat. For how long? We don't know. Could be months, could be years. But Sarah, you're not dying anymore, at least not from this." I sat in that sterile office chair and felt the weight of 3 months of goodbye letters, changed wills, and burned bridges settling around me like debris after a tornado. "Dr. Patterson, what are the chances this continues? With continued treatment and the right lifestyle changes, you could have years, good years." I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with the implications. I'd spent 3 months teaching my family hard lessons about love and respect, lessons I'd thought would be my final gift to them. Now, I had to figure out how to live with the consequences of my deathbed revelations. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Bringing dinner at 6. Made your favorite real chicken soup, not the canned stuff." Another from Marcus. "Tommy wants to show you his science project. Can we come over after school?" Jessica. "The kids made you cards. Lily wrote you a poem." For 3 weeks, they'd been showing up, not with the frantic, guilty energy of that first day at the doctor's office, but with something that felt like genuine care. They'd learned my favorite color, purple, my favorite restaurant, the little Greek place downtown, my favorite movies, anything with Meryl Streep. They'd started calling just to talk, not just when they needed something, but they were doing it because they thought I was dying. I pulled into my driveway and sat in my car, looking at the house I'd almost given away to my sister, the garden I'd thought I'd never see bloom again, the life I'd been so carefully dismantling. My phone rang. Margaret. Sarah, you sound strange. What's wrong? The cancer is almost gone. Dead silence. Then, what? 60% reduction. Dr. Patterson says it's practically a miracle. I'm not dying anymore. Maggie. Oh my God. Sarah, that's wonderful. She stopped. Wait, what about everything you've done? The will, the family, the money transfers? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I walked into my house that I'd been preparing to leave, and looked around with new eyes. The frantic cleaning Jessica had been doing. The flowers Rachel brought twice a week. The children's artwork covering my refrigerator. Evidence of a family trying to love me properly, maybe for the first time. But were they loving me, or were they loving their guilt? At 4:30, my doorbell rang. All 3 grandchildren stood on my porch with construction paper and crayons. We want to make you more cards, Lily announced, to help you feel better. Because you're sad about being sick, Tommy added. And when people are sad, you make them pictures, Emma concluded with 7-year-old logic. I let them in and watched as they spread their art supplies across my kitchen table, chattering about school and friends and the normal, precious concerns of childhood. Grandma, Lily said as she carefully colored a purple flower, are you going to die soon? The question I'd been dreading. What do you think about that, sweetheart? I think maybe you were just lonely and that made you sick. But now we're here more, so maybe you'll get better. Out of the mouths of babes. Lily, what if I told you that Grandma is feeling much better? That the doctors think I might not be as sick as they thought? 3 little faces turned toward me with hope, so pure it nearly broke my heart. Really? Emma whispered. Really? But that means some things might change. What kind of things? Tommy asked. Well, your parents have been taking very good care of me because they thought I might die. If I'm not dying anymore, they might go back to being too busy for Grandma. Lily put down her crayon and looked at me with the serious expression that made her seem much older than 12. Grandma, do you think Mommy and Daddy only love you because you're sick? I don't know, baby. What do you think? I think they love you because you're our grandma. They were just too busy to remember how to show it. And what about you 3? Will you still want to visit Grandma if she's not sick anymore? Of course, all 3 said simultaneously. Because we like you, not just because you're sad, Emma added. At 6 p.m., Rachel arrived with homemade soup, and Marcus followed with Tommy's science project about butterflies. They settled into my living room like it was a routine now, like family dinner at Grandma's house was normal instead of extraordinary. I have something to tell you, I said after we'd eaten and admired Tommy's butterfly collection. They looked up expectantly, probably bracing for bad news about my health. The cancer is almost gone. The doctors say I could have years left, not months. The silence was profound. Then Rachel started crying. Not sad tears, but relief so overwhelming it shook her whole body. Mom, that's amazing, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. Is it? Because I need to know something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. They waited. Are you here because you love me, or because you felt guilty about me dying? Marcus and Rachel looked at each other, then at their children, then at me. Both, Rachel admitted quietly. At first it was guilt, but Mom, these past 3 weeks, I remembered why I used to love spending time with you. I remembered how funny you are, how smart, how good you've always been at listening. I forgot that you were a person with your own interests and opinions, Marcus added. I thought of you as just Mom, like that was your whole identity. But you're Sarah, who writes books and has strong political opinions and makes terrible puns that we pretend not to laugh at. So what happens now? I asked. Now we keep doing what we've been doing, Rachel said, because we like who our family is when we're actually paying attention to each other. Even if it means less inheritance money? Marcus smiled. Mom, I'd rather have you alive and giving all your money to Aunt Margaret than dead and wealthy. Besides, Rachel added, we've learned something important these past few weeks. What's that? Having you in our lives is worth more than any amount of money. We just forgot that for a while. I looked around my living room at my family, really looked at them, and saw something I hadn't seen in years. I saw people who chose to be here, not people who felt obligated to be here. So, I said, pulling out my phone, should I call Tom Morrison and change my will back? Actually, Marcus said, keep it the way it is. What? The trust fund requirements for the kids' education? That's brilliant. It ensures they'll always have a relationship with you. And the donations to charity? Rachel added. That's exactly what someone like you should do with their money. But what about your inheritance? They looked at each other and smiled. Mom, Rachel said, you gave us the best inheritance possible. You taught us how to love our family properly. Everything else is just money. As my family settled in for the evening, the kids doing homework at my kitchen table, the adults planning Thanksgiving dinner, everyone exactly where they wanted to be, I realized something important. The cancer hadn't been my death sentence. It had been my wake-up call. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't getting even with people who've hurt you. Sometimes, the best revenge is teaching them how to love you properly, and then letting them do it. Outside my window, the autumn light was fading, but inside my house, everything felt like it was just beginning. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.